getting along. So when I say that man, so you cannot get nothing getting, you cannot get nothing out of getting shit out of the asshole. Bullshit for it to come out of the asshole. So if you back there thinking that the ass is the new pussy, slippery. So lies just can't hold on. Lies are just supposed to slide off, and the truth is supposed to carry on. But not here in Babylon. Here in this made up bullshit called Babylon, I can call it. This shit is as twisted as a pretzel and twice as salty. People, you got to wake up. No pain, no gain. Real shit. Here you go.
Yin and yang. Most Westerners are familiar with the above symbol. That this is I walk around with a chip on my shoulder all the time. No, I'm happy. I'm very happy. And one of the greatest pleasures of my life is that God blessed me to be a woman. Most Westerners, this is giving a definition of yin and yang, manifests itself, divided its nature into two opposing forces from the oscillating dichotomy in its nature, negative being yin and positive being yang. And don't take negative because yin represents the feminine perspective. Don't take yin to be negative to mean that it's negative. Now, we're not talking about emotional, or attributes. Not negative and emotional attributes. We're talking about um, different dualities and different roles when it comes to um, the science and all things. Um, from the oscillating dichotomy in its nature, negative yin and positive yang, all of that which exists is being produced. The dots in the centers of the white and black fields, which is here, everybody should be familiar with these symbols, but the dots in the centers of the white and black fields represent the seeds of change as polar reversal and periodicity occur. This constant changing is the interplay in the cosmos that creates life, while life in turn generates the creative energy that manifests the cosmos. Life. We're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. That this is, I walk around with a chip on my shoulder all the time. No, I'm happy. I'm very happy. And uninformed as well. Defining womanhood purely by how we're oppressed strips us of our agency and self-determination and empowers the patriarchy. I am a woman regardless of my experiences of sexual harassment and being invalidated by men at various points in my life. That's a great point. I couldn't agree with that more as far as women defining womanhood purely based on how we're oppressed. So do our men now turn around and become a champion? Some of us have more yang than yin. Some of us have yin and yang. All of that which exists is being produced. The dots in the centers of the white and black fields, which is here, everybody should be familiar with these symbols, but the dots in the centers of the white and black fields represent the seeds of change as polar reversal and periodicity occur. This constant changing is the interplay in the cosmos that creates life, while life in turn generates the creative energy that manifests the cosmos. Life. We're talking about life.
I had to go back to that.
The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. Produce and reproduce ourselves. Produce and reproduce. And we're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. We're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. We're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce. We're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. We're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life.
You do know that I've got 2 degrees, both in finance.
Yin and yang represent the negative and positive dualism existing within all things, from the protons and electrons of the atoms to the conscious and subconscious of the human psyche. To the physical, and this is me saying this, not in the book, to the physical representation of man and woman. Yin is negative. It represents passive, female, receptive, dark, night, cold, soft, wet.
Yeah, so this car's been held on a routine traffic stop. Get over there and commandeer the vehicle before they move it on.
Heat, hard, dry, summer, and sun. Now, we're talking about life. The ability to produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce, and then produce and reproduce ourselves. Life. About LGBTQ and the transgender, I'm the feminine perspective, I'm the feminine attribute. Yin and yang represent the negative and positive dualism existing within all things, from the protons and electrons of the atoms to the conscious and subconscious of the human psyche. To the physical, and this is me saying this, not in the book, to the physical representation of man and woman. Yin is negative. It represents passive, female, receptive, dark, night, cold, soft, wet, winter, shadow. Yang is positive and active. It represents male, creative, light, day, heat, hard, dry, summer, and sun. Now, we all have yin and yang in us. So as a woman, just because I'm the feminine perspective, I'm the feminine attribute, I still have yang qualities. And depending on your particular, sociological and psychological makeup, some of us have more yang than yin, some of us have more yin than yang. But understand that this is the root of the science of the universe, duality. So when we talk about men being able to protect and provide for women, and I'm not just talking about the man that you decide to have a relationship with your husband. I'm talking about the men in our families, our uncles, our brothers, our cousins, our grandfathers, our fathers, and even the men in the community. I'm talking about that element of protection. Where in the conversation about LGBTQ and the transgender element does a man who has decided to live his life as a woman fit into that dichotomy? So do our men now turn around and become a champion for protecting transgender women? Is that how that works? Or do transgender women have the ability, and I've seen at least 5 videos in the past year of transgender men who you can't even tell they're men, they look like women. And they're talking soft, and then all of a sudden they turn into a man's voice. Theological element to the black male-female relationship and the man-woman-female relationship in general that is not being talked about. Everything's being blurred. Everything's being mixed into a pot now, and we're waiting to see what we come out with. Adichie's next major point, that womanhood is about the way the world treats us, is problematic and uninformed as well. Defining womanhood purely by how we're oppressed strips us of our agency and self-determination and empowers the patriarchy. I am a woman regardless of my experiences of sexual harassment and being invalidated by men at various points in my life. That's a great point. I couldn't agree with that more as far as women defining womanhood purely based on how we're oppressed. And I really don't like when women do that. And that's really a underlying sentiment in the feminist ideology, which is interesting.
Hello, you're through to Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help?
You call her out for doing
Call
exactly
again.
what
Goodbye.
feminists are known to do. I think being a woman, particularly the process of childbirth and being able to produce life, and not just physical life through children, but a woman, when she is mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally in tune with her higher self, can give birth to a whole entire nation. A woman can give birth to a grown man when she's in her right mind. A woman can nurture and cultivate and elevate and inspire and edify a man in a way that nothing else can.
She right.
That's womanhood.
She right. And she right. Calm that nigga down.
And she can do that for her children as well, and she can do that for other women as well. So I completely agree with her when she talks about, always.
With PlayStation Vue, you get all of these channels. Want to see them again?
When she talks about, always defining womanhood based on how we're oppressed. But if that's your position, then don't assign yourself to feminism. She said, and if we want to play, she said, and if we play the oppression Olympics, right? View of who has it worse, many could easily make the case that trans women do. She went on, there's a whole paragraph. She said that in the 2011 survey, transgender people were reported to be twice as likely unemployed and 4 times as likely to make less than $10,000 a year. In a 2000 report, trans women were found to be 1.8 times more likely to experience sexual violence. Trans women account for 72% of homicide within the LGBT community, far surpassing numbers for cis women. 2016 was the deadliest year on record for transgender women. In Brazil, it accounted for 144 reported murders throughout the year. Now, this is why I always say, when people start throwing statistics out there, statistics are used, they can either be used as a measuring scale, which is what they're supposedly for, or they can be used as a method of misconstruing truth. These numbers, how many transgender, if you're going to give these statistics, then you should tell us how many transgender people are actually in this country. Because the number of transgender people who identify as transgender in this country qualifies every statistic. You say 72% within the LGBTQ community, 72% of homicides is constituted as trans women. Well, how many women was that though? If there was 100 homicides, and this isn't even in a year, this is just in general, it looks like. So if there's 100 homicides and 72% account for trans women, that means 72 of them were transgender women. But are we talking about in a 10-year time frame? Are we talking about in a 30-year time frame? When it says transgender women were found to be 1.8 times more likely to experience sexual violence than other survivors, what? So are you really trying to tell me that transgender women are being experiencing domestic violence at a higher rate than women in general? That's laughable. It doesn't even deserve, it shouldn't even be mentioned. It is true that many trans women are not perceived as women for a portion of our lives. This, however, does not mean that we are afforded the experience of men. Yeah, to an extent it does. I'm not privileged. She used the terminology privilege before. Now she's saying the experience, we are afforded the experience of men. Yeah, if you live as a man, you experience what men experience. That doesn't mean it's all good. Some of it may be bad. But you do experience the experience of men. Then she says, does this mean that the growing group of young trans girls who transition at a single-digit age will never be respected in their womanhood? Single-digit age. That means from 0 to 9. So now we have a new growing group of young trans girls who transition at a single-digit age who will potentially never be respected into womanhood. So now at 7 and 8 and 9 years old, you have boys who are deciding that they don't want to live as boys, that they want to be girls. So whole other conversation. I'm not going to get into that because I'll talk for an hour. I am not interested in a 3/5 compromise on my womanhood. So you want to be considered 100% woman, not 75%. But you can't do 100% of things that women do.
Nah.
So where do we draw the line? She says that, at the end of the article, she says, I urge black cis women, that should just, I urge black cis women to do the same and also realize that not all black trans women are interested in or owe you this dialogue. I owe you this dialogue. I owe you this dialogue. I owe all of the young black. This is important. Don't be arrogant and haughty. Because the truth of the matter is, like the woman who left a comment on my video about I'm sick of straight people getting in our business. The truth of the matter is, none of you would be here without men and women. So there's a hierarchy to this thing. We don't need you. I'm not talking about on a, you know what I mean, as far as humanity is concerned. All of us have relevance. All of us have importance that are here. So don't mistake what I'm saying to be some cold, harsh, judgmental, you don't matter type thing. No, you do matter. I wouldn't even be addressing you if you didn't matter. And even in my disagreement, I can still love you. I can still embrace you as a brother or sister because I understand the chain of events that got us to where we are. But we don't need you to reproduce ourselves. You need us to reproduce yourself. Well, at least now we do. The scientific community now, stem cell research, is trying to create fake wombs. And this is a big thing, you know, when everybody was doing the ice bucket challenge and raised some $90 million that went towards stem cell research. But one of the things stem cell research is doing is trying to create womb type environments to be able to cultivate and foster children without a man or a woman physically united.
Oh, that's bullshit. Like, I ain't hit nothing. All that bullshit. Kelly, y'all fucking cereal look better than this. That's funky. Real funky. Real funky.